All right, you all. So I am back with another scandalous detailed video about the infamous Chino Black. If you do not know who Chino Black is, he got his start in the adult film industry in 2016 and he worked up until 2024. He is only credited with doing 22 scenes, you all. I believe it's a lot more than that. Like I always give y'all that disclaimer, but I'm only going by what, sites have credited him with doing. So he's only credited with doing 22 scenes. You all, his break into the adult film industry was sort of scandalous and it was just downright kind of mean. Let's get into it. Now, Chino Black was quoted as saying that when he first tried to break into the adult film industry, he said he sat down and spoke with a young man that he wanted to manage him and, get him started in the adult film industry. Why he said when he sat down with this gentleman and, was telling him about his interest to work in the adult film industry, the guy told him, young man, why would you want to go and do a thing like that? You want to do corn? You look at you. You're fat, you're black, you're ugly. I just think that I can't see you selling a DVD. The adult film industry, you don't have what it takes to be an adult film industry. You're not thinner. You're not as light as those guys. They have, they go by image. And you just don't have the body type and the look it would take to succeed in the adult film industry. Don't you want to do anything else like maybe sing or dance? Now, I'm going to tell y'all something. That depression and that sadness that he felt from that guy kind of breaking his spirit like that was very short-lived, and let me get into it. So, apparently, one night, he's, being adventurous, walking in the park. I guess his thick old chocolate behind was jiggling the right way or something, because he walked past this young man, and the young man took one look at him and said, "Hey, man, I'm trying to film some content, and I want to do it with you. So, what's up?" Chino Black, being the adventurous, freaky person he is, said, "Okay, I'm down. What's up?" The guy started recording. He put Chino Black on a picnic table and let that behind have it, child. Okay? He let Chino Black have it right there on that picnic table. And baby, that video that they uploaded, it went so viral to where when that man that set him down and broke his spirit and told him he didn't have what it takes, every production company that was hot at that time, Dog Pound, Black Rain, all of them were blowing his phone up, trying to get him to film scenes and, sign him on to their production because they said they were looking for new talent. And I guess that thick chocolate boy, they felt like he had what it took. So it is being said that when Chino Black, started with Black Rain, they said that he kind of revolutionized, he's credited. There are a lot of people, I have read comments, I have seen people do interviews where they said they feel like Chino Black was the one that revolutionized and changed the game of, the black gay adult film industry, because he was one of the thicker, chocolate, boys that, kind of came on a scene and kind of took it by storm. There weren't a lot of thick chocolate boys like him. Think about it. A lot of them were kind of stick thin, so I can agree with that, and I'm going to give him his flowers with, saying that I do agree with he revolutionized it. Now, you all be in my comment section when I be doing videos about other people hollering, "Oh, where Chino Black, Chino Black, Chino Black." I still won't say that Chino Black, paved the way like Remy Mars or Shorty J. I just don't see it. I'm going to give him his flowers. The man was phenomenal. He did, break barriers in the adult film industry. But, whatever. We'll talk about that later. But, he did, work with Black Rain Productions. They said when he did that scene with Mustang, I guess that was his debut into the professional adult film industry. Baby, it was up from there. From there, Chino Black was on fire. There was not a content creator, or there was not a popular, adult film star that did not want to film with Chino Black. They all wanted to film with him because the man was on fire. This new chocolate boy, and he thick, he making waves, and, everybody, he going viral, everybody commenting, wanting to know who he is, baby. They wanted to film, but they wanted to get a piece of that. So, he did, like I said, the man was on fire. But let's talk about some scandals that he had. Now, after a few years of him being in the adult film industry, Chino Black decided, he wanted to move on to greener pastures. So he decided to just get him a job and, kind of separate himself from the adult film industry. There isn't a lot of information on why he wanted to separate himself from the adult film industry. It was like he just up and, decided he wanted to start doing something else. Well, Chino Black got a job. He got a job and, he was working. He's happy. He's doing his thing. Now there are a couple of different versions to this story, but there are some people that say somebody at the job that he worked at did not like him, and they came across his site and sent all his links to their management and end up getting him fired. While you have some people that say that it was somebody who just didn't like him. I guess they had a crush on him or had a vendetta against him or whatever, and they're the ones that found out where he worked and sent the links to his job or whatever. Regardless, he ended up losing his job, and a lot of people advocated for him. A lot of people were like, how dare y'all do something messy like that? While you have some people that felt like he got what was coming to him. You had a lot of people that said, well, he's sitting up there complaining and crying about losing his job because somebody sent that to his boss, yet he's all on Twitter, constantly promoting himself, constantly putting links to his old scenes or whatever. So, which one is it? You're claiming that you want to distance yourself from the adult film industry, yet you keep on creating these pages and these Twitter accounts or whatever, promoting yourself and promoting your old scenes. So, you can't sit there and say that, you want to distance yourself from the adult film industry, yet you're the one creating these pages, putting the links out there for people to copy these links and send to your boss. So, you had some people that felt the way about it. I personally felt it was wrong. You don't send nobody's, X-rated scenes to their boss. That's just flat out messy. So that's just one little scandalous thing about Chino Black. And another scandalous detail about Chino Black. A lot of people did not know that PRK, Fat Rabbit Krilla, they didn't know that he wasn't a strict top. A lot of people were under the impression that PRK was a strict top or whatever. It was until, it was said that Chino Black and, PRK did a scene together or whatever. Well, shortly after they did this scene, somebody did an interview with Chino Black and, they asked him, I guess what stars he liked filming with or who was his favorite stars that he filmed with or whatever. And he replied and said something along the lines of, well, I've never filmed with a strict top before. Everybody I've ever filmed with have been versatile top. And a lot of people felt like he kind of inadvertently, bust PRK out because nobody knew that. So yeah, that was another thing that kind of made people side eye him a little bit, because they said that they felt like that was a little messy that he bust PRK out. Me personally, I don't feel like that's a reason to hold that against him, because a lot of people have been whispering that PRK, what's the other one? Y'all, I always forget his name, the light-skinned boy in New York. Yardy. A lot of people had been whispering that they were not strict tops, that they just wasn't topping on camera. So, y'all, I don't know. Whatever. I don't think that's a reason to hold that against him. But a lot of people just felt like, he was borderline messy. You have a lot of people, when you go to blogs and you read the comments, a lot of people just feel like Chino Black is not a nice person. Me personally, every interview I've ever seen him do, watching him in scenes, he seems very, grounded. He seems very down to earth. He seems very relatable. So I don't know what the hate is for, but that's I think that people just grasp at straws when you're just so perfect. And I think the fact that Chino is not the traditional well, at the time he came out, he wasn't the traditional adult film star. The fact that he was a thicker, darker dude, who revolutionized, changed the game of the adult film industry, I think that people just wanted beef with him. That's just my take on it. But, Chino Black is definitely still alive. He's doing well for himself. From what I heard, he's not really doing that much in the adult film industry anymore. I do know that as of a few years ago, he was kind of go-go dancing. He is a professional dancer. He said that, that's one of his passions. He loved dancing. And like I said, Chino Black, he's another one of those adult film stars that did not box himself or bank on the adult film industry to pay his bills. He always tried to keep a a job and, you know, embrace his other side hustles. And for that, you know, I respect him. But I will say that, you know, Chino Black is legendary. He's very legendary, and I'm honored to be giving him his flowers. Who do you all want to see me do next? Because this has been a story of Chino Black. Drop in the comment section.